Skeleton Crew is a new Star Wars series that is now streaming on Disney Plus. The finale of season 1 just premiered earlier, a couple of hours ago, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about this show. This is the latest offering in the Star Wars canon, and it takes place after the events of Return of the Jedi, where you follow a group of kids who are on a planet called At-Adin, where everything seems to be working in a very systematic way. And lives are pretty mundane. Doesn't seem to be much traction when it comes to doing more entertaining or interesting things. However, when they stumble across a ship that seems to be a pirate ship of sorts, they eventually end up embarking on an adventure, and they discover there's a lot more to the galaxy out there than just what their planet has to offer. And so it sort of turns into a Goonies/Treasure Planet storyline, because eventually they run into pirates who are trying to find treasure, and the treasure might be something that is very, very close to them, and they have to figure out a way to keep things safe and stop any trouble from coming to those that they know. And there are some fun elements that are being played around with over there. And so it leads to a Star Wars story that is very different from a lot of the stuff that you may have seen recently, in that it has nothing to do with a lot of the Star Wars stories that you may have seen recently. When I think about the established canon, which we've come to realize over the years, whether it be with the original movies, the prequels, the shows in between, the sequel trilogy, all of that stuff, eventually there are connecting points. Like, there is a larger framework at play, and eventually, you have these characters tie into a lot of that. In the case of Skeleton Crew, it's not focused on any of that. Yes, there are Easter eggs and references every now and then to bigger things that we know, but there's not a ton of them. There's no such major character name drop, for instance, or something like that, that happens and the kids suddenly are like, oh my god. It very much just keeps it to the kids. And it makes for a very effective story, and I think that it makes for actually one of the best Star Wars shows of the modern era. It's just a very entertaining time with this group of kids who are just on this fun space adventure. Here they know nothing about the galaxy. They're discovering all of this because At-Adin is a shielded planet. And so when they've gotten out of it, they're actually getting to see the galaxy, and they're realizing just how much is out there. And so to be able to see everything and sort of experience it from their eyes makes things very, very fun. For example, very early on, they end up in a place where, the scum and villainy of the galaxy is. And obviously that's something that you've seen before, but going back to the original Star Wars with, Mos Eisley. But then when you look at it from these kids' perspectives, it's very different because they don't know how things work here. They're just expecting people to usually be very helpful and nice, and then eventually it's like, oh no, this is very dangerous. I can't, you can't really, handle situations the same way like you would anything else. And so having them navigate through all of that was a lot of fun. And these kids are really great. I liked all 4 of these characters. I think Wim, Fern, KB, and Neil, I think those are 4 wonderfully realized kids, and I would love to see a bunch more adventures with them if they decide to do a lot more, because I think you could go so much further than this season alone. And all 4 of these kids get a really great chance to shine over here. They're all really, really great. Particularly Neil. Neil might be my favorite character of the entire season. I really love this guy. And he's just such a sweet kid. Like, he's just sort of going through this entire thing. He's a really talkative kid, but he's also just so endearing and so lovable. Like, there's a point, especially, I think it's episode 4, which is directed by the Daniels, who recently won the Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And when they made that episode, they focused in on Neil. And I thought that was a great idea. It just gave so much to that character. But really, I say that for all the kids. There's great character work for all of them. Fern is someone who thinks she knows everything, and she wants everything to happen a certain way. And then when things aren't going like that, there is a bit of a hubris moment, a realization that she can't do everything herself and she doesn't know everything. And she's not as hotshot as, she may appear to be at times. And that's something that's also reflected with her friend KB, who is someone who's been through an accident and, she's not capable of doing everything, but she wants to do as much as she can. And so she ends up being very helpful as well. Like, there is some great work over there, and there's a great aspect to that character that, again, does shine through. There's some great realizations over there. As far as Wim goes, just this idea of a kid who wants adventure out there, just wanting to, live the world that he has seen in pictures, like, the Jedi fighting, in the galaxy and stuff like that. Very, very well realized as well. And, just again, that childlike wonder. This is what Star Wars is about. You want there to just be that feeling of, elation when you're seeing a lot of this stuff, this sense of wonder to it. Eventually, they run into someone named Jodna Navud, played by Jude Law. And he's someone who seems to be very mysterious because he seems to have ties to being a pirate, but he's also has the Force abilities. He can move things, with the flick of his hand, and there are some incredible efforts which are within him. So every now and then you're watching the season and you're trying to figure out just exactly who this character is. And I thought they played that very nicely too. Like, there was some really, really good stuff over there when it came to the mystery surrounding Jod, but also keeping maintaining the aspect that this is not a character you should fully trust at any point. Because early on you do get a bit of a hint as to who he is, and there is a sequence surrounding him and his old crew, which things go awry, and then his first mate ends up, mutinying against him. And so there is that aspect of it, which is, obviously playing on his mind as he's trying to find this one treasure that seems to be the planet where these kids have come from. And so eventually all the other places that they end up going to is also serving to the fact that not only do the kids want to get home, but he wants to get to their home so that he can get the treasure. And so there is constantly this, back and forth between them, and it plays, again, very nicely. It leads to some very entertaining sequences, some really visually awesome moments as well, as they're trying to evade certain spaces. They end up in spots which they, again, don't really know how to navigate, and so they have to figure out along the way and make some friends along the way. And what I really like about that aspect of it is also, towards the end, there is a lesson in that, there is a lot of evil out there in the galaxy. But there's also good people out there. Because every now and then, these kids will end up in places which are not great. And there are criminals surrounding it, or there's, low lives and mercenaries, whatever you have. Despite that, they will meet a character who is just nice to them, who just wants to help out. And it's just those moments where I think the show establishes, like, there's good everywhere. And that's something that Star Wars has always maintained as a really nice theme. This great balancing act that, there is both things at play here, the good and the bad. And so to measure out those two things is very, very well handled in this show as well. Also, there's a droid aboard the ship named SM-33, voiced by Nick Frost, and you can clearly tell he had a lot of fun playing this character. There are so many moments with this droid which are funny, but also just, again, endearing is the word of the day when it comes to Skeleton Crew. And he manages to make those moments land too. Like, as it begins, he's very clearly motivated by the pirate's code and making things work a certain way, because otherwise, if we break protocol, what are we without a code? But then, as the show progresses, it's very clear where his loyalties lie, and every now and then he'll just make a decision, and the idea that, well, they are kids. I care about these kids now. And it's really sweet how that eventually does manage to come around, because it's like, forget the code. I'm here for them. Especially as Jod starts to become a lot more, untrustworthy in the grander scheme of things. Now, there are a couple of gripes that I do have with the season, mainly when it comes to some of the stuff going on the side, like the Addon stuff. I wasn't as invested in it. It just felt like sometimes it pumped the brakes a little bit in the middle of everything. Obviously, you're following the efforts that are being undertaken by them, and there is one nice payoff moment towards the end of the season where a message is transmitted through the barrier as they're able to send something up, and that was very nice. But beyond that, you don't get too much with them, and I wish we did get a little more time, especially because there's a couple of things going on with characters that could have used a little more emotional catharsis. You do get a couple of those things, however, towards the finale, so I did like aspects of that. But otherwise, it's not something that we get a ton of time with, and I wish we did, because there are aspects of that are brought up that raise a few questions, especially in terms of the operations of the planet, particularly when it comes to this supervisor and everything being run by droids. I'm very curious as to how this entire thing works. I'm not familiar with this part of the Star Wars lore, so I'm curious to look it up a little bit more to see if there's any more material out there about that. Eventually, though, like I said, the finale does bring a lot of this around. I did enjoy that finale. It just aired. It was very, very fun with the pirates finally trying to invade at Aden and this very tense showdown that eventually happens between Jod and the kids. And then eventually Wendell and Farah, who are Wim and Fern's parents, eventually they come in as well. And, they're trying to stop Jod from doing what he's doing. And I did really enjoy the finale. It was very, very well done, and it had a lot of great payoffs to it. I would have liked a few more minutes to the finale, mostly because I think there's a couple of scenes I would have liked a little bit more closure to. But by the end of it, I was very happy with Skeleton Crew, and I had a really great time watching it. Also, it was a really great score from Mick Giacchino, who I thought did a very good job with the soundtrack over here, especially the theme that the kids have. Very well done stuff. Like I said, there's a couple of gripes that I have, with some things, and I think some things could have been expanded on a little bit more. But it's genuinely wonderful. Like I said, Skeleton Crew is definitely one of the better shows of the, modern Star Wars era, and I highly recommend checking it out. It is very surprising just how effective this is. And I can't wait to see more adventures with these kids. I hope that they do more adventures with these kids. I'm going to give Skeleton Crew Season 1 an A-. This is good stuff. I wish Star Wars does more of this stuff. This is really, really solid work over here. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. May the Force be with you.